Welcome back to the CT Support Group podcast. I'm your host, Quinn, and I'm the peer support specialist for Turning Point CT. This is part 2 of my conversation with Emily Stainton about our journeys with ADHD. Be sure to go back and check out part 1, and I promise I'll be right here waiting for you when you're finished. In today's episode, Emily and I talk some more about tools that we have found helpful for our ADHD, so be sure to check out the show notes for links to some of the tools that we mention, including one that Emily herself has created and put out into the world in order to help others. We also get to talk about Emily's advocacy work in the mental health sphere. Without any further ado, here's today's show. So I know that we were talking a little bit too about like systems and tools and stuff, but I wanted to talk a little bit about something that I've actually shared with the Turning Point CT blog before I wrote like a blog post about it. And I use this app. It's called Finch. And it is a really cool way to track progress towards goals, and to like divide them into different tasks. But it's also set up kind of like a game in a way. So as you complete some of your tasks that are associated with like reaching your goals, each day you power up a little bird and it goes out on an adventure. And so you can see my little bird is adventuring.
It looks like Pokemon Go. That looks so much fun. Is it a free app?
It is.
No. Okay, I'm downloading that as soon as I get home. That's awesome.
Yep. So it's a free app. There is a paid version that folks can use, and that honestly just gives you a little bit more in terms of like things to decorate your bird's house or to dress your bird and like different things.
That is awesome.
But as you complete goals and our tasks and make progress towards your goals, each of your journeys, like, every certain amount of days you will, you get like these rainbow stones or like what you can exchange to like buy things.
That's awesome.
They also do each day, like during the month that you power up your little finch, it goes out on an adventure and it encounters something, and it'll come back and you can respond to, sometimes they learn a joke, sometimes they try a new food, and you can like respond to that. They give you two options.
So cute.
And your bird develops a little personality. And so it ends up having likes and dislikes.
No
and
way.
You can look at
their mood and everything.
How confident and compassionate and secure they are, curiosity. And as you each day that you use it, you get a little bit more.
Oh, I can't wait to download that. That's awesome.
And it's so much fun, but it also has like really helped me kind of visualize like my progress towards things, like staying connected to my friends, because when I'm stressed and busy, I get
neglect them.
Friendship blindness.
Same.
And so I have to tell my friends, like, listen, our friendship level doesn't decrease just because we didn't talk for a couple days, like I promise. And things like keeping my space like tidy. That's something that like feels really important to me, because I feel like when my space is tidy, I can think about the things that I want to be thinking about. Showing care for folks, like spirituality, connecting with my community, like, and they give you goals that you can choose from. You can create your own. But that's been something that I think has really helped me in a lot of ways, like with experiencing like some symptoms of ADHD and like not always knowing where to start, having that as like a little menu of things that I can just check off. Like that's all I have to do
in a fun and engaging way.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
It's also just really cute. There's also a community, so there's a Facebook group, there's a Discord, so you can connect with folks who use the app.
That's awesome.
Worldwide, which is incredible. They have like different channels on the Discord where you could talk about different things, like fun things like upload a picture of your pet or
that's great.
Yeah,
because sometimes you just need a cute pet pick me up for sure. That's always good. Yeah, that reminds me too. I cannot wait to download that Finch. But that reminds me, I do have a timer app that I've been neglecting to use, but when I do use it, it's great. You plant a tree, so you can set your time to be 20 minutes, 25 minutes, 15 minutes, like we were saying, doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start your timer. And when it's done, you go to your forest. And unfortunately, this is a new tablet, so I don't have a forest, but you have an entire tree. So for every group of like focus time that you do, it grows a tree. And there is an option to, if you exit out of this app, it will kill your whole forest.
Wow.
So if you really have a paper to write and you want to use your app, you can set that, and that kind of like punishment procedure there on this little pretend forest will like, oh, do I exit out of the app and start scrolling and check an email when you're supposed to be doing like something else? But you can turn it off. So I lost my whole forest one day because someone called me. My mom called me. I was like, I need to answer this. I can't. Oh. So I did turn it off. But if you have like an extra device or something where you don't have important things coming in, you can always use that for motivation too. So you grow cool. Your forest. But if you exit out of the app and you get distracted, your whole forest dies.
That is wild.
Too funny.
Yeah. So I think the last like part of ADHD related stuff that I wanted to talk about was medication and just your journey with medication, or things that like come up for you around that. But so yeah, I'll just pose that question.
Yeah. Medication for me has been the hardest part of the journey. I was, like I said before, I was misdiagnosed. So I was taking a medication, lithium, for 10 years. Since I was 16, started in the hospital with 1,800 milligrams, and then worked my way down into outpatient at 900 milligrams at 19, and then weaning myself off of it a little bit. At one point, I had a new therapist, and I told her the dosage that I was at, and she said, "How long have you been on this?" And I said, 8 years. And she's like, "And you're still at this high of a dosage?" And the psychiatrist I was seeing, they weren't dosing me correctly. Apparently there's a therapeutic range where if you get into this therapeutic range with a lithium at that time for patients with bipolar, you take it for so long, you're at that threshold, you don't need to keep taking such a high dosage. Mm-hmm. And I was at that high dosage for years. So coming off of that I worked full time and in school, and I definitely went through withdrawals. Because I was taking sleep medications at the time that were also an antidepressant. So I didn't want to go cold turkey off of everything. My psychiatrist didn't want to just remove everything naturally for the withdrawing symptoms.
Yeah.
But also there was fear in the beginning, and sometimes still today, just because it's only been a year and a half that I've been exploring this evaluation. They worry that there's a possibility an episode could occur. So they didn't want to just remove the lithium drastically and right. God forbid something happen. And so they weaned me off of it, one medication, and I weaned myself off another medication. And then we started a new ADHD medication. So I take 10 milligrams of Adderall in the morning. And once I was weaned off of that and really feeling what it felt like to process my emotions and not take a medication under the supervision of both therapy and a psychiatrist. This was all done through a treatment plan. So I was never alone in this, because that's always dangerous.
Right.
But now that I take an Adderall medication every day, it has really helped my focus. I I've been on it since a year now.
Okay.
And I like the way I'm focused. I like how I don't feel strung out like some people say, like for when, because, there's people who use it recreationally and that's not
Right.
always good, but that's, I feel stable. I feel like I can feel my emotions. I feel like I can actually process what it truly feels like to be sad, to be angry, to be excited, and not be suppressed by other medications. Because now it has forced me to really process and cope. So in when I was taking lithium and now that I'm not taking it, I also learned that I was super dependent on it. I would take my sleep medications early if I was sad one day. I was in a sense abusing my medication and not using it correctly. Because I just didn't want to feel anything. And I was like, okay, I take this prescription, so that's okay, right?
Yeah.
And then I have it. That's what it's meant for. If I'm feeling sad, it's an antidepressant. And I tried to convince myself, I did convince myself for many years. And if I got into a fight with a friend or my mom, we argued and bickered, like just little things. If I felt like a very strong emotion towards it and I couldn't control myself, I would isolate and just take 2 pills instead of 1 and go to sleep and then hope that I wake up in the morning and feel better. And I was like, wow, I guess that's not a healthy way to cope with things. So that is something I opened up to my therapist about when I first met her a year ago. And I realized that on my own. And she was like, well, I'm glad you realized it now. So, because that's a dangerous road. And I know people who are on that road and they don't realize it. And it's always very dangerous. And it's unfortunate that we have to advocate for ourselves for sure, for whether we need medication or whether we don't want medication. It's everyone's personal journey. So I'm for medication, but I'm also, if you don't like medication, that's your prerogative. I think whatever you do to cope with things is the most important part.
Yeah. I also think, when we're talking about, journeys with like medication, it's so easy to think about like how often this happens where prescribers are so stressed and so overwhelmed and have such an incredible caseload that the amount of time that's really needed to spend with someone to kind of suss out like, okay, what's really going on, and let's try something out, let's meet again and follow up and continue having conversations. Like it ends up that that it doesn't really go that way for a lot of people. They end up in the office, they get 15-20 minutes for an intake sometimes. The prescriber is like, okay, let's try this, come back in a month and we'll see if it's working. But the education isn't really there for the patient, whoever's being prescribed the medication, and like the amount of time that's really needed to figure out if this is something that might be a good fit, like access to things like testing for medication sensitivities and to see like genetically what does your body say that could work.
And services like that are usually not covered by your insurance.
No, they're astronomically expensive and inaccessible, which I think is a shame because I feel like it could save so many people so much suffering.
It would eliminate a lot of trial and error that people experience for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still a little trial of error in itself, but it narrows it down to the genetic factor, which is huge.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. And that's something I personally experienced with my misdiagnosis at 16. The psychiatrist said, oh yeah, listening to my parents, I went in, I didn't even want to go to the psychiatrist. I didn't want to be there. I wasn't talking.
Right.
So my parents were talking, oh, she's acting up, she's sneaking out at night and blah, blah, like typical teenage things, nothing that is too out of the ordinary. And they were the psychiatrist within that 30-minute session listened to what my parents told them and told her, and not what I had to say, not what I was feeling. And at the same time, I didn't know what I know now about mental health, how going to therapy and going to a psychiatrist are so important, especially if you take medications. But at the time, I wasn't seeing a therapist. There was no dual treatments there. There was no communication with another provider. And the psychiatrist had no cultural competence either. That's another big thing that I've run into. I'm a first generation Colombian, and I'm very white. I am very no one would ever assume that I am Latina. So when they're listening to my mom speak and they're listening to my dad speak, they weren't asking questions. They weren't asking, well, any other situations from me. They didn't know the history of the fact that my mom immigrated here.
Right.
And that intergenerational trauma that I was born into and that I live with was never covered up until this past year.
That is wild to me. I'm like, not in a way that I am surprised, because this is something that I've seen and I know is like far too common. But the fact that it happened then, it's still happening now. I mean, this is for you a journey of like about 10 years. So spending like all of those years, seeking like care that wasn't culturally responsive or, comprehensive in the way that, you were able to, have a psychiatrist who was also working with a therapist for talk therapy. It's just,
yeah.
Wow.
And now as myself as a provider, I provide therapy for children on the autism spectrum, doing ABA services. And I frequently have a lot of clients who are of different cultures and different diversities. And I am very big proponent to advocate for that. I'm always reminding, I'm not in an administrative role at my current position right now. However, I'm still acting as that leader. I'm still reminding everyone, well, we got to remember everyone comes in different shapes, colors, and sizes, guys. Let's keep that in mind. Because you never know what someone's home life is. And even if they aren't from a different culture, you don't know the challenges that a family could be experiencing at home. And that goes with every provider, whether you're an adult going to therapy or if you're a child with autism going to a therapist or what the case may be. But cultural diversity is huge part that a lot of people, I think, miss, because I know a few people who go to college like, I'm going to be a social worker, which is great. We love it. We want more of them. But don't forget, we live in a world where there's a lot of diversity.
Yes. Yeah. And that cultural context and the backdrop for that people are in or are living in or, grew up in is like a big part of the story that so frequently just gets left out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's awful. And there's a big part of me that is hopeful with like, our generation, sort of that like up and coming like Gen Z kind of moving into like the workforce and knowing how unafraid they are to just say like, this is not right is it's promising. I think that's one of the things that does excite me, is that we're entering sort of this new era of Gen Z workers who are not afraid to speak up, challenge people.
So. I love that. I think the first time I realized the cultural challenges that I was experiencing in my own journey was when I watched Encanto when it came out. I watched that movie and I was like, oh, this isn't just a movie. This is my life. Like this is what happened. This is what happened.
Wow.
So, and I was crying and I don't think I can watch that movie without crying.
That's fair. I mean, I can't either, and I don't even relate to all of those parts of it. But
that movie, I think, connected with so many people, even outside of if you're not Colombian,
right?
Yeah,
absolutely. We already like started to touch a little bit, on advocacy, and I think like this sort of cultural responsiveness and the lens I think that you take to your work, but I would love to learn a little bit more about your advocacy work that you do with NAMI Connecticut and sort of the roles that you take on there?
Yeah, so I volunteer for NAMI Connecticut. I started with NAMI Connecticut back in December. I joined their NAMI Smarts workshop. It's like a 4-hour workshop on a Saturday, and they have volunteer teachers who are teaching you how to do the legislative advocacy, how to write to a senator, how to call a senator, how to write a testimony and read it at the Senate, how to do that in a formal way that's giving an ask and explaining what we need and advocating for really what we want. And that's kind of where I started diving deep with NAMI. And I did that back in December of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And then I spoke my testimony in February. I spoke at this at the Capitol virtually. We had the hearing. I did the hearing online. Even I wasn't sure if it was going to be in person or virtual because COVID things were still going on.
Mm-hmm.
But they had it in person, which I wish I could have gone and to be there because that would have been cool just to sit in the Senate and speak my testimony. But I did it virtually, talking about mental health and making sure there's parity in our coverage and our resources. And that was really what lit a fuel in me to like really, I could go somewhere with this. I could really do this. This is motivating. This is really what makes me feel purposeful. I feel that sense of motivation, and I feel like this is for me spiritually. This is what I was meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's at work advocating for children of diverse needs who are the most susceptible to abuse in treatments. Statistically, a lot of children with autism experience abuse because either if they're non-vocal, they might not be able to communicate for themselves, or they're just because they're children and things get missed sometimes. So whether it's at work, whether it's with my friends or family, whether it's whatever it is, I can't wait to be graduated so I can just really dive deep into working and doing this in my free time because it really is what motivates me. But I recently became the chairwoman for our Next Generation Advisory Committee. So with NAMI Connecticut, there's a bunch of different boards. We have our public policy, education, communication, and the diversity, equity, and inclusion board. And then we have our seasonal boards, which is NAMI Walks and one more, drawing a brain fart on it. But all these boards are in place to provide more outreach, provide advocacy, provide the education, provide support groups on every platform throughout Connecticut. So we, as the committee for young adults and next generation, we call ourselves, we're going to have one person on each committee join in for like their monthly meetings or go quarterly and say, hey, this is what the young adults want.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we agree with. This is what we don't agree with. I am on the public policy committee for NAMI Connecticut. We host monthly meetings, and Margaret is there every month. She's the chairwoman as well. So I go to that and I just tell them what we've discussed in our own meetings. What would we like to see? What kind of coverage? What would this health insurance bill that they want to pass, is this going to be suitable for our demographic? Is this what we genuinely want? Or does this make absolutely no sense? It's trash. Let's veto this. Yes. So that's my role. I definitely chose the public policy committee because I'm getting my feet wet in the legislative advocacy part. Because I've shared my story with friends and family, but I really, really want to dive deep with making sure our politics and our state representatives and everyone is doing what we can. It's not going to happen overnight. It could take some time, especially with politics. Things go very, very slow. But I really hope that we can really make this foundation of young adults, and in the future we have a vision to kind of provide a mentorship for other young adults who are maybe 16, 17. Our group is between 18 through 28. And we do peer run young adult groups, support groups, social events, retreats, and of course our advisory committee. But we want to be able to have the older adults I'm 27, maybe we can mentor a 17-year-old. And if I just envision how I was at 17 when I wanted to run away and I just wanted to end it all and tried giving up many, many times. I wish I could have had someone there that had a true understanding of what it was like to deal with that. That peer run and that peer support is crucial, because going to a therapist office is shameful with your parents. I hated it. I sat there with my arms crossed and I said, "You're not going to make me talk." And I didn't, and it bit me in the butt a little bit. So, but I learned, and I know my story isn't unique. I know there's other people who have a very similar story, but they might not be as comfortable sharing and speaking up. And I don't think everyone should have to speak up. I don't think everyone should have to share the most vulnerable parts of their life to get what they deserve. So I really want to be a voice and a vessel for those people that maybe aren't as willing to speak up, but want to break this stigma and just don't know how.
Yeah. I can definitely relate to that. I'm also like, again, I can really appreciate like your commitment to wanting to provide that like peer part of it. As a peer support specialist, like, I work with teens.
That is, that's right.
I work with teens and young adults, and it's so important, I think, for them to have access to people who understand. And I think that for me, that's also really shaped by my experience as a trans non-binary person, that, growing up, I didn't see adult versions of myself anywhere. And if I did see queer folks, especially, like in media and movies and TV shows, queer people didn't get happy endings. And so it was so sad to think about like, oh, well, when I get older, I don't get, the happy ending, or I don't get to live like a full life full of, care and connection and happiness and, all of the things that like all of us, innately just really want and need in order to thrive. And so like, being able to be that person for young folks, being able to take on like mentorship roles. So I'm a mentor, a volunteer mentor, and peer supporter for a kiddo that I absolutely adore. They're 16 and have had it really rough and are, still kind of exploring their identity. But I was very adamant about wanting to show up in that way and be like, hey, I've been there and I get it. And, I'm someone that you can talk to, who's not a clinician. I bring the life experience and that understanding to the table. And sometimes it's like people really need that, especially young
lived
folks.
Experience is crucial. I even started looking for therapists before I found this one. When I was searching and going to Psychology Today and trying to shop around, I specifically asked for someone with lived experience. I didn't want anyone who was just fresh out of college, didn't have anything to show for it, really, because that living it is far more valuable to the advice than someone who's just theorized about it.
Right. Yeah. And there is a place for clinicians, obviously. Like there are, so many things that they are able to offer. And I think when when folks are missing that connection with someone who has lived experience, it can be hard. It can make living with, a mental health diagnosis or even just symptoms of struggling with, some aspect of mental health feel that much more lonely and isolating and shameful. And, I love what you're talking about when you talk about, breaking the stigma, because these are conversations that I wish that we were able to have 10, 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm glad that we're having that now. It kind of brings me back to that, that grief and gratitude that like, I'm glad we're talking about this right now, but where were the conversations 20 years ago? Why weren't people talking about this? So,
Yeah,
but
definitely.
I have such a deep appreciation for the work that you're doing and your willingness, I think, to share your story in ways that are so relatable and impactful, and um, can also be used to inform policy and legislation, because I feel like it's so absolutely necessary. So thank you. I appreciate you doing
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. Yeah, it's fulfilling for me. So it keeps me motivated because I know I would have wanted that when I was 17, 18, and I want to keep providing that. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining me today, Emily.
It was so nice to meet you, Quinn.
It was so good to meet you. For the folks who are listening, where can they learn more about your advocacy work, for your other work, social media, wherever? Tell us where you're at.
Yeah. So for all NAMI events, you're going to find us at NAMI_YAC. All our support groups are listed on our website as well. Just type in our calendar of events and you can click on the young adult group, young adult community, and there will be a whole bunch of events listed there. And you can register and sign up for those for free. Everything is free. There is no cost to these things. It is, of course, a nonprofit organization. But for myself personally, I am found at Colombian Spice, and Colombia is COLOMBIAN and Spice.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. And I will put links to all of that in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Quinn.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the CT Support Group podcast. I am so grateful to Emily for taking the time to sit down with me and to share her journey. Emily, if you're listening, it was a pleasure getting to know you, and I'm so glad that the stars aligned for us to be able to meet and to have this conversation. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to Emily's author page, to her social media, the NAMI CT Young Adult Connection calendar, the apps that we mentioned, and more. As we head into the holiday season, a reminder to our listeners to be safe, be well, and do not hesitate to reach out to our team at Turning Point CT for resources and for peer support. After all, this is the CT Support Group.